Okay, so I finished with the eraser going around the Pope, and I even went into the hand and got a smaller size to erase and took away some of that as well. So you can do that, and it's always good to. It does soften the outside lines if you go around with the eraser tool. So if you see any bits like here that are still a bit jagged, just go back to the eraser tool. You can make the size a bit bigger. Make sure you're working on the right layer as well, again. Otherwise, you're removing something from the background. So I would go to the eraser. I can use this size, or I can make it slightly bigger so it works a bit faster. So when you're happy with all of that and you've cleaned it up, see what happens at softening the edges as well. So it doesn't hurt to go around with the eraser just to soften some of those jagged edges that are there. So it makes it a bit softer. Okay, so zoom out, Control 0 to show the full page. Now we want the Pope standing on the ground. We don't want to see him floating, so make sure that you find a place to put him. Now, whenever you have something that doesn't have shadow under it, it sort of looks like it's floating. He looks like he's floating. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new layer. So you go over to your layers palette, see the little magazine file, I call it, over here on the right. Click on there and you've got new layer, or Shift Control N. So we're going to call this shadow. We're going to give him a shadow. If you put shadows on anything, even when you're drawing, it sort of anchors it. So we're going to drag that shadow under layer 2, which is the Pope. So we can label our layers as well so we know what they are by double clicking on the type that's there, and we can layer them. So double click and we can call this one the background. So that obviously sits at the bottom of the layers. Then the shadow will be sitting underneath the Pope, not on top, and then the Pope is sitting on the top of the layer. So it works in that order. So now we want to create a shadow. So I'll go for something like the paintbrush tool, which is here. It gives you some different options there. So I'm selecting the brush tool. I'm going also down here. I want the shadow to be black. So I'm double clicking on there. It was set as white initially. So then I'll select down here and go OK. So now it shows me that my fill color will be black. The opacity is 50%. So I'm just going to give that a go and see. Now, it's not allowing me to do anything because I don't have a layer selected. So I'm going to click on the shadow layer. Now it will allow me to do something. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to do a little shadow underneath him. Now, so that already looks like he's a bit more anchored onto the ground. He's not sort of floating. Now, if you think that's too dark and you want to change it and you want to delete it, Control Z. In Photoshop, you can do Control Z just like Illustrator, and it undoes the last thing that you did. But it doesn't take you much further back than that. So then you need to go up here to do the Control Z up here, and it might take you back more steps. So if I want to make the opacity, I can take the opacity even down further to say 30%. And then let's see what happens here. So it's a little bit lighter. And then if you decide that you've done too much with the shadow, you can again go back with the eraser tool and you can make sure that you've got a good size brush. And then you can take some away again as well. Not. So there you have the Pope. You've got some shadow, you've got the background. If you want to add other objects to the background, then it's exactly the same process. So I would just use the tool up here, which is the magnetic lasso tool. It takes a bit of getting used to, so you need to have a steady hand with it. It just takes practice. If you see that it goes off task and a bit out of control, just double click on the selection tool up here, and then just Control Z to undo it. Okay, and that's it. So you will save your work file, save as. Now, if you save it as a Photoshop or a TIFF file, it saves it with your layers. I always suggest keeping a working copy. If your teacher says the resolution is no good or the placement doesn't work, you can always go back if you've got your layers and play around with things. If you flatten it, you can't. So make sure that you maybe give it your name. I usually save as a TIFF, and layers is ticked here, and then save. I just leave this and go okay. It's up to you whether you have an IBM or a Mac. Including layers will increase file size, we know that. Now, if you're putting it into another document, you might also want to save it as a JPEG or something. So save as. What are our other options here? So you may also want to save it as a JPEG as well. So you can import it easily into other files and it also on your Google slide. So there's another option as well. And then you can save another one. That will flatten it. It'll be a more low res. Okay, and then save that. I would keep it on large files so you don't lose the information that's there. And okay, well done everyone.